that would be a violation. Really what we're picking up here is when someone's in violation of their permitting obligations, not necessarily property owner rights or trespassing obligations, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. It's just that we're exempting that portion now out. And I just want to make sure that folks who still have those signs understand they're still protected through the sign. We haven't taken away that ability.
Yes, that is not the goal here. Those individual property rights would still trump, in my opinion.
Thank you.
One quick question, Captain Sterling. So the solicitors are going to come to the MAC Center, or are they going to come to the police department?
They'll come to the MAC Center. We have a representative there who handles our permitting.
Fantastic. And then, so I noticed today we have a presentation for the budget, and the MAC Center has a small line item on there. And I guess it's just food for thought if there's more budgetary need in that area or not. But that's really for the budget conversation this afternoon. So, and they will, again, I guess with regards to the background check, the Zionsville Police Department will be managing that, not the MAC Center.
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, and that way the public will know that that's who's managing the background check as we move forward. And I think that's great. I think you've done a lot of great work on this, and I really appreciate that. I know when we brought this out as an issue, you were eager to help, and I think you've done an amazing job. I think we'll tweak it just with the second reading, and I think we'll have a great piece of ordinance here to move forward that'll maintain property owners' rights as well as protect Zionsville residents from pushy solicitation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I would echo that just briefly. Having been engaged in just the email dialogue back and forth between Captain Sterling and Heather and Councilor Melton and all the effort put in here, this has been a pretty heavy lift, and I know it's something that's important to everybody, so appreciate everybody's efforts on this. Any questions for Heather, Captain Sterling, or Councilor Melton? I would entertain a motion.
Motion to
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-16 for the ordinance. I'm sorry. No, 15-15 for the consideration of the ordinance regarding the solicitation permits.
So we have a motion to introduce ordinance 2023-15 on first reading by Councilor Melton. Second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving along, up next is a consideration of an ordinance amending the fee schedule for the town of Zionsville. This is a first reading, and we have Cindy Poor, Director of Finance, Cindy Poor. Good morning, Cindy.
Morning. So we have a couple of changes to the fee ordinance. One will be, one is to match up with the new solicitors ordinance and introducing the tier level for those permits for 30-day, 10-day, 30-day, and 120-day. They decided to put those various tiers in there. Also for the fire department, they are adding a new fee in there for construction building plan review for big box buildings. And then the last item that was added in here was to waive the event fee for the Zionsville Cultural District and the Lincoln Park Concert Series. So those are the changes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions or comments for Cindy? Having none, I would make a motion to introduce ordinance 2023-16 on first reading. Second by Vice President or by Councilor Choi. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you.
Thanks.
Up next is a consideration of a resolution regarding the appropriation of additional funds. This is resolution 2023-13. This is the Crossing Grant and ICE America.
Yes, these two, we just recently received the latest Community Crossings grant for DPW, and we just need to appropriate those funds that we've received. And then the other for Ice America, this is the money that we received from the insurance company and just need to appropriate it as well.
Are there any questions from counselors?
Who pays for the insurance?
I'm sorry.
Who pays the insurance premium? What budget item?
It's
Is
mostly
it shared?
a little bit. Most of it comes out of the administration. No, I'm sorry. It's a non-departmental since it's a townwide item. So that is probably about 3/4 of it is paid through the non-departmental. Wastewater pays a little bit into that, and so does the golf course.
Got it. Has there ever been any thought about making it like a shared service? Because our insurance is going to go up because of these claims,
Right.
but it's just, you're not paying into something that the town has to pay out of. It just seems,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Just
Yeah.
for the record, because this is a hot topic for me. Just from the non-departmental portion for the insurance, we budgeted 143,000. We've year to date, we've paid 258,000
Wow.
in insurance. And we've estimated that next year, because of all these claims, it's going to go up to $450,000. So when I talked earlier about the administration being, preferring to go legal route, we pay for this long term from this lack of ability to communicate or willingness to communicate. We pay for this long term. We're going to be paying for this for years as we hopefully in the next administration and administrations following aren't quite so legal happy, that we will start communicating with people and working things out without having to get legal and insurance involved. But right now, if we're looking at 450,000, that's essentially a $300,000 increase over what was budgeted this year. That means that we're viewed as high risk for insurance companies. So just keep that in mind. It's, when, I hear people say, oh, well, insurance paid it.
Yeah.
We're paying for the insurance. I mean, our premiums are going up by more than what is being paid out by insurance.
And probably being paid out on the claims. If that makes sense.
Right. That's what
I mean, you
meant.
can do a lot.
Yeah.
You can do a lot with $300,000.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Let's see here. This is a public hearing. I approved publication of notice of public hearing. At this point, I'll open the public hearing. If there's any members from the public who would like to comment, now's your chance. Having none, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any other questions for Cindy? I mean, these are, as we talked about before, the grants kind of the pass through for Lance, and the Ice America is, certainly a way to mitigate as much additional damage as possible. So I would make a motion to approve resolution 2023-13. Second by Councilor Choi. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you. Up next is a consideration of a resolution regarding the appropriation of additional funds. This is resolution 2023-14. You'll notice in here there are essentially 2 additional appropriations for Baker Tilly, an additional appropriation for ZYFL. Our 4th attempt to publish and have the same reading for parks, some ready grants, and DPW. So we could have maybe Jared, Cindy, Drake, Lance, a whole bunch of people up here talking about it if we have questions. So
Stand by or that call.
I don't know. I guess at this point, you know, whatever questions we have from counselors, I guess I do have one question. I noticed that this, so this is also a public hearing and I'll open that shortly. But this also shows that we published the local road and bridge fund separately as well. So we published the last hearing we had, resolution 2023-13 had an appropriation amount of $402,583.04. And then separately, resolution 2023-14 posted in the Star has the exact same dollar amount published there.
I think it's published in there, but it is not on the resolution. So it was just a duplication.
Okay, so duplication in the publication, not on the resolution.
Correct.
Okay, so we can pull that out. I will say, as I've submitted to the council, just a brief narrative of the appropriations that we've requested. One of them was for ZYFL for the AEDs. We had a situation at the high school for the Jamboree, and we actually had another one following up that next weekend. That's a not to exceed number of $10,000. You'll notice there's two general professional services consulting. One's for $61,580. That's a not to exceed. That's the one that the mayor said she would sign our contract with Baker Tilly once we have the appropriation approved. She was not willing to or stated legally she couldn't do it before that. And then you'll notice the $20,000 underneath there. That's actually for an appropriation for the contract that she has already signed and didn't have the money for the reconciliation. So those are those three particular appropriations. You know, the rest of them, I guess we can kind of work through.
Just to make sure we're clear on those, and I mean, I know Cindy and I've talked about this, but for folks following along, obviously you're pretty clear on the AEDs for football. Baker Tilly are already here. They're already working. I guess that's part of the second contract that
Correct.
President Plunkett mentioned. There's an additional appropriation. Just to help folks follow along, just talk about what Baker Tilly's doing here and what these dollars would go for.
Okay, so the not to exceed 20,000, that's for Baker Tilly to come in and work on the 2023 bank reconciliations to get everything caught up. Those
Which they're doing now.
they're doing now, yes, and they have just put a second person on that, so we can hopefully we'll be getting those back completed soon. The 15,000 not to exceed is for internal controls compliance, and actually that contract did get sent to the mayor this morning, and I expect to get it back signed shortly.
That's the other one we requested for the internal controls. It is a little bit different than the initial contract that we'd sent over, but I talked with Dan at Baker Tilly, and the part that was removed was essentially an audit department as opposed to an internal controls audit. That internal control audit is still taking place.
Perfect.
And he feels good about that being able to provide some benefit to us for what we need. So
Cindy, why are we appropriating $1.9 million for the Ready grant?
Those are the funds that would be coming in for the grant, so they just have to be appropriated before they can be used for the Gateway project for that's designated for that grant.
It has to be used for the Gateway project.
I believe that's what they presented when they got the grant. So yes,
What's the timing of that funds having to be used?
that I would have to check. I'm not sure.
We're having, I guess, a note to this council, we're having a change of administration in 3 months. I don't particularly want to appropriate $1.9 million that can be used between now and the end of the year. I'd rather appropriate it for the next administration to figure out how to best use it for their vision of the Gateway project. So if we appropriate it now, it can be spent before the end of the year.
we just need to know the timeline then.
So the 1.9 million is purely for design and engineering. And primarily that is the realignment of First Street and kind of cleaning up that first main Sycamore corridor we talked about for years. We have selected an engineer to design that as well as a pathway extension across Lions Park. You know how the pathway coming from Raintree kind of peters out and this brings on across. So within that 1.9, it is all engineering and design. And the portion I'm closely familiar with is the roadway realignment. So if we wait, we'll have to tell our consultant we have not contracted with them yet because this is a reimbursement grant, meaning when the town receives an invoice, it can then submit it for reimbursement. It's not a lump sum. So I just want to get a little bit of background. If we don't appropriate this or a portion of this, you know, we can certainly wait for the road and pathway design to actually begin in earnest, but I want to get a little bit of background there.
So is the grant predicated on that specific project, the First Street realignment, or is it just the Gateway area?
It is specific to the infrastructure changes necessary to support the gateway roadway realignments. One element that is part of this, as I recall, is design of a plaza. So that is sort of a interior portion of the gateway. But the bulk of the design work is for utility relocation design, street design, and pathway design.
I mean, I guess from my perspective, I don't know that we've received an update on the. We got one update on the progress of the Ready Grant, or the Gateway project from Corey a few months ago. But my understanding is since then properties changed hands. There's different owners. Have we seen the vision for the Gateway project?
I can't tell you what it is right now. It's a lot of money to appropriate. I'd want to know the timing of it. I mean, I certainly don't want to lose those funds because it is a grant, a reimbursable grant. But I'd also like to know what the money, even if it's reimbursable, like, I appreciate that detail, Lance, but if we can wait, I would wait.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good to understand the timing of that for sure.
I don't have the actual Ready grant details. I do know in the actual application packet, which is, you know, regional packet, there were sort of specific goals for the project and then specific timelines. I don't know, Lance, if you know what those timelines are. I know Ready, there are pretty aggressive timelines in Ready from the state. So I don't know if you have them. I was not involved
Not off the
in
top
that.
of my head. The year 2025 sticks out in my head. I think that you must have to spend them by then, but at least obligate, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Is the expected timeline though for the work, right? So obviously the money's here. You'd like to appropriate it to the engineering firms and the design. But they're ready to begin, they're ready to start, or have they already done any work?
We've done a lot of preliminary work on their good graces, not billable time, but we are ready to the point where we need to actually get into, yes, the physical true design. The roadway configuration is as it was presented in the Gateway presentation, which shows a shifting of Main Street, Zionsville Road, aligning with First Street. So that, that hasn't strayed from the publicly vetted vision. So we'll do what you want to do. We're eager to get designing on the roadway elements, but certainly ready to work with council.
Is the appropriation, it's just sort of for contract professional services. Is there teeth behind that it is tied directly to what you are asking for, Lance? In other words, it can't then be spent on some other study?
Yes, it can't. So I'm fairly certain, and I'm trying to pull it up from before, just with Ready generally, and like I said, I wasn't involved in this specific project, but you do have to outline with pretty specific detail what you're going to spend the money on. I believe in the grant proposal that the town put forward, and looking to Lance or someone that might have been more involved, that it was very specific to this First Street realignment and then the pre-engineering cost. I don't believe it can be spent once it's received from the state on a different purpose, because the state is actually coming in to fund those projects and approving them with specificity, but maybe helpful. I don't know if someone could come and give a Ready update presentation, or if we could get a copy of the grant agreement. I've never seen the grant agreement or timeline, so I can't advise with any more than anecdotal and from what I've heard from the IEDC's announcements.
This is a resolution. It's a single vote. Is there any appetite from this council to push it one meeting so we can get through the budget discussion to see where that ends up? This is a lot of money followed by a decent sized deficit coming in, which I'm not upset that there's a deficit coming in because we sort of asked for that so we can figure out how to cut it back. So it's not a problem with that, but I'm just I'm a little nervous, voting for $2.5 million and then having the budget discussion.
Or what if we split it out? We don't have to do everything in one
Yeah, I mean,
vote.
we can split the resolution up, correct, right, Heather?
Yes, you could just remove that single appropriation from the resolution.
I would
And I think-
like to get Baker Tilly going.
Yeah, I mean, it's just waiting 2 weeks. I'm easy, but it just, I wish we'd had this budget discussion before all the appropriations.
Well, I mean, for what it's worth, from my perspective, I would like to split it up as well. I've got questions about some of the park requests as well. Jared, I've got I'm sorry, I kind of jumped up. Does anybody have any other questions for Lance or Cindy? Jared, I've got an email from like September of last year where, and obviously these park requests, this is the fourth time we've heard these requests, the fourth time they're published. I guess I don't understand why we keep publishing them, because we've just continued the decision to vote on them. I don't know why we keep publishing them, but I've got an email from, or I've come across an email from folks from the school and you and some other folks that said that at Trailside specifically, they are going to be required to tear out trails in the relatively new future to accommodate certain projects there. Given that, then the timeline that they do not have a safe endpoint yet, they believe that connection will need to happen further down the road when they're building the future North Access Drive. Has that changed?
They do not have a set time on when that school expansion will be.
So
I
that has
believe-
not changed then. That hasn't changed then. So I guess my point is, like, we're hearing a request today to have that connectivity, and we've gotten emails from, a number of different people about connect the trail to the school. This is not a function of connecting the trail to the school, because the school doesn't have the ability to safely handle those students coming in based on this email.
So that was based around September. That would have been an original route. So we looped in Lance and his expertise, and we found a route that was conducive to the bus traffic, as well as them coming into the school property onto an existing sidewalk and then crossing that parking lot to get to the school safely. So
So the school has a different stance than they had before.
yes.
Okay.
yes.
Personally, for me, I have no problem completing that, but I'd like to see that email from the school that's stating that they would like to have that done. I mean, again, based on what I have,
Well-
I don't have that. So,
And I could say that we have a temporary construction easement that was agreed upon after those conversations with the new proposed route. So we all are on board. It's been reviewed by park board attorney as well as the school attorney, and we're ready to execute that if the funds become available.
yeah, I'd like to do that. I mean, I asked a similar question in April when we first heard the appropriation, and I didn't get any follow-up from that. So that'd be good to have before we approve that. And again, just to understand the process, like, we hold the public hearing, which will open up here again shortly, and we've already had it. So we can bring these requests back and approve them at the next meeting. We don't have to hold another hearing because we've already done that 4 times for some of these. So questions, any other questions for council or from counselors?
Well, just for the purposes, again, of folks who are listening, there's a pretty significant, and I know we've talked about it before, but pretty significant allocation on the parks line. And I know, Jared, some of these are for different funds that you already have dollars for. Could you just quickly walk through the different pieces? I've got 3 different asks in here.
Yes, happy to do that. So the 3 asks are to accomplish 3 goals, and that is to secure the remaining funding for the rail trail widening, as well as maximize the utilization of our impact fees for park improvements, And that final request was to fund the rail trail connection to Trailside Elementary and the existing Hampshire subdivision. So unfortunately, the capital requests of the Parks Department were omitted from last year's budget process. We were able to adjust that in February with the pickleball court ask, but the rail trail ask has been outstanding. So just looking for some direction on that. Should
Real
this,
quick, before you go to the next one. So, and the fund within your parks budget that's restricted dollars that are already accounted for. You have the dollars in your budget to do that. Is that correct?
yes, and specifically Fund 403 can only be utilized for capital projects within the park system.
And what's that particular dollar amount for folks?
300,000
Okay,
to
thank you.
complete the widening of the rail trail.
So for these various projects, we have Fund 403 and 473 to the restroom project, the rail trailhead. And then you've got Fund 103 park operating for the rail trail to Trailside Elementary. Do you have the fund balances for these minus any kind of commitments already on the funds, against the funds?
Yes, so Fund 103, which is now the operating fund of parks, as well as the cash reserves that were historically separated, sits at around 1.7 million. So it's nearly 100% additional funds to the operating expenses of the 23 budget. Fund 403 sits at $651,709.07. And the Fund 473, that's our impact fees, sits at just under 2.1 million, $2,095,184.26. And I really want to stress specifically with the impact fees. So we made a calculation of how many of those we could utilize for the trailhead project. And then as we really deep dove into the impact fee plan and understanding how to best utilize them, we realized that we could also bundle in the expenses of running utilities to that amenity. So because it's a trailhead, there's sewer, electric, and the like. So we were able to allocate from the larger project an additional $117,955.80 of expenses that we could use with our impact fees. So impact fees are a very restricted use of those funds. So every time development happens, there is a kitty for these park funds that are used for the expansion and development of our park system. Within that study of the 5-year period, specific amenities deficits are determined by a committee, and these funds can only go towards those amenities. So this is from the 2012 plan. So as you can imagine, our park system has grown a lot since 2012, and there are a lot of amenities that we've paid for that deficit of that amenity. So say we had 3 sun shelters and we built 3 more. Historically, we could have used these impact fees for those, but now that that deficit is met and there's a surplus, we can't build the 7th sun shelter with these fees. So really we're against the clock per se of finding amenities that we can utilize these funds for. So we're trying to be strategic and find the best use of these with every project moving forward.
I guess what I'm trying to clarify is that much of what you're asking for are in impact fees or restricted dollars that are in budget balances that you feel are healthy. And it's just it's not a matter of asking for new operational dollars in a budget, knowing that we're getting ready to have a conversation about a $12 million gap that we have to close.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, these are funds that were omitted from the 2023 budget. Either
Right.
one email we have says it was omitted by the administration. Another one says it was omitted by the previous CFO. I mean, these are Jared, I sent an email on April 10th requesting just a brief overview of what would happen, how the revisions of these phases would take place if the appropriations were not approved. Obviously, we got an email back on like the 14th that just talks about the need and what you would have there. I still don't think I've necessarily seen a scope of, if they're not approved, what happens to the project? How does it get modified? So I guess I'm a little certainly want to give you the opportunity to do that. I mean, again, that was back in April, so I understand the significance of these projects, and you want to make sure we're doing what we should be doing. I would also point out that many of these accounts are still not reconciled. We still don't know. We have the appropriation in here to help continue that reconciliation process. But
So one of the reasons why I just want to wait one more meeting, again, Jared, for Parks today, you're asking for $618,000 in additional appropriations. If I'm looking at the budget we're about ready to discuss, the budget requests from the Parks Department are going from 2.37 million to 4.69 million. So you're asking for $2.3 million more than 2023 budget, which is 97% increase. As we go through this process, there may be things that get cut from that process that you actually may have more of a prioritization of the stuff you're asking for here today, or maybe not. I think what you're saying makes sense, but it almost feels like this is flip-flop. Like I'd want to get through the budget stuff and then say, all right, we've got through the budget stuff. Is this still the stuff you want now? Or are there things we just cut that you want more? Let's have that discussion. We don't have to drag it out. I think that's kind of driving my, is there anything here that can't wait 2 weeks? I'm not sure that, outside of maybe the financial audit stuff, I'm not sure that there is. So that's my only hesitation is I want to get through the budget stuff. I want to understand the justification for this increase as well as all the other department heads increases, and then get a better sense of, all right, this is fine too.
A different question for you, Jared, is all these other funds, Fund 103 and 473 that you gave the fund balances for, and all three of the fund balances, there's no commitment on them for other projects already. Is there?
The pickleball court has around 20,000 outstanding for Fund 403, but that was already appropriated earlier this year and will be spent down. Fund 103 is just the operating, so just the remaining balances from our operating budget. And no other commitments from Fund 473.
So in comparison to your requests for allocation appropriation, the funds look healthy except for 403. How is 403 funded?
403 is funded through the park improvement line within the operating. So each year that we underspend on that, those funds transfer to Fund 403 for future capital projects.
Okay. So you have a balance of roughly 651,000 plus, and you're asking for an appropriation of about 300,000 plus the 20,000 that hasn't been spent on the pickleball courts. Does that leave that at a precarious level, or is that 300,000 roughly buffer enough of a fund remaining to then carry us forward for any other projects?
Yeah, and we do anticipate a slight recharge from this year's park improvement fees. So we anticipate to underspend there. So that's kind of.
Yeah. The other funds look healthy.
Yes. That one's the leanest for sure.
Yeah. So that a little worried there, depending on what else you might want out of that fund going forward and what that recharge looks like in terms of revenue into that fund.
Right. Yep.
Jared, I know you've been back on these, and this is something you would like to get done. I do think Councilor Garrett made a really smart point, and that we're looking at budgets. We've seen the preliminary asks. There's a lot that has to be trimmed, and I know I get that this is kind of the first go at it, but it's quite substantial for those folks who may not listen later. We got a $40 million revenue budget for the town with a projected spend of 52 million. So we got to trim $12 million. And I get it's early in the process, but you have a significant ask, almost doubling your budget. And I just want to make sure that these would be your priorities. And in fact, if you don't get the budget that you'd ask for, which is unlikely, maybe you would change your mind, and maybe you wouldn't. But is it safe to say that it would be okay to wait 2 weeks to get through this preliminary conversation? Or in your mind, is this you're 100% locked in that this is really what you would like to see happen?
I mean, as the central spine of our park system, I feel the rail trail is one of our highest priorities as a whole. And since this is an active project with active contracts, that seeing this project through is, I think, our biggest priority right now, and we could scale back our ambitions for next year if necessary. What I really don't want us to get to is a point where the contractor runs out of work because we paused a section and then we incur demobilization and remobilization fees. So really trying to keep the project moving as scoped and closed out this fall so it benefits our residents.
Is there a portion within your three-pronged ask that is part of, I mean, we can all see the construction happening. Is there a part of that that is one piece has to move forward and the other two could wait? Is that fair?
The trail side project could easily wait at least one meeting or more. You know, that is going to be a Department of Public Works project. So Lance will be spearheading that, and we're just happy to support and partner in that initiative. The impact fees, we are looking to close out the trailhead project. So utilizing those fees with that project would free up those fees to go towards the rail trail project. That's the ambition with that. So that would buy us some time as well. What my big concern is that the portion of trail we set out to pause as we're continuing on phase 2, unfortunately has been driven over as they were getting their egress from Mulberry Tunnel. So it's pretty well destroyed. So should this not get funded, we'll likely have to close a portion of the trail or leave it in stone or something like that until we could get the allocations in the following year. So
Yeah, right. If we do move forward with splitting this out, that's my point, is Parks doesn't have to also be packaged together. It can be split out into President Plunkett's point. He'd like to see documentation from Trailside anyway. I feel like that portion's already going to be put on hold. But I agree with you that on the portion that's really already under construction, that does feel like it's urgent and probably not something that would change based on the 2024 budget.
So that would be the 403, correct, Jared? The 300,000?
yes, and the impact fees utilization.
And the impact fees, you said?
Yes.
Anybody else want to parse anything else out?
Cindy, can you, the land acquisition, is that something, because this appropriation is closing costs, right? So if we wait longer, there is a risk at that point that the closing costs could go up or no?
Yeah, probably about 4,000 of it is just being short of what we budgeted anyway, and then the rest is closing costs. So, I mean, with not doing this, then basically we're just paying more interest.
Yeah.
And I know if we carry this into next year, that's about $10,000.
And that's the 402 cumulative capital development fund.
Correct.
Okay. Lance, you want to go through 201? I know obviously you guys submitted your memos, much appreciated.
Sure. The 201 motor vehicle highway fund items, one is 178,000, and this harkens back to the previous administration when the town or the county kind of rushed to construct a failing bridge on Templin Road and asked the town if we would contribute if they built a pathway, like I think Zionsville Road, some of the pathways that we built now to get across a bridge, to put a pedestrian facility on that bridge. The town said yes. It was just a verbal agreement. We said we wait till everything gets sorted out. We got final construction costs. They did apply a portion of a crossings grant. So what was originally an estimate of $350,000 actually came in at about $178,000. The other item of 8,600 is, as you know, we have this new vetting or evaluation process for flasher crosswalks. And the process is when we find a location that is deemed to be suitable or have warrants, we bring it to you, you pass your resolution, and you further show your support by funding uniquely the flashing sign packages for those crossings. I'm happy to elaborate any more.
Okay.
I don't think so. I'm just tracking on here. It sounds like if we are going to have an opportunity to maybe split up this additional appropriation, sounds like the Baker Tilly ask, the AEDs, some of the parks with the trails and the DPW are what we might want to move forward with. Is that what you're tracking? President Plunkett?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the two Baker Tilly, the AEDs, the motor vehicle fund. I mean, I'm certainly not, I certainly don't want, and the cumulative capital development also. I certainly don't want, you know, expenses associated with tearing down equipment and bringing it back up. I think maybe as we understand more about the impact fees. I mean, that's something that's the $178,000, or no, that's the 117. I mean, those seem to be a little bit easier to understand by way of where we are with an account balance and what's coming in and what's not. And I would assume $100,000 would help keep that project moving along. So I think from my perspective, I would like to see those go through the food and beverage for the AEDs, general professional services, both of those for Baker Tilly, the two motor vehicle highway funds, park impact fee, and the cumulative capital development. And then I would also remind the public, we don't have to hold another public hearing at the next meeting. We just simply need these to be presented and we can vote to move them forward at that point, once we get the additional information. So that's where my head is. I'm certainly open to additional dialogue, communication about it if anybody's adamant one way or the other.
You mind if I give you a little bit of information about the police?
Oh, sure. Yeah, please.
So even though it's an ask from their operating account, it's for some building remodel, because they've had some issues with they need to replace carpeting and drywall, et cetera. The reason why this amount is so specific is that there is a grant fund that they had that has not seen activity since 2009. And probably with one of the September meetings, you'll be getting a resolution to declare that fund dormant. And this is the exact amount of those funds that will be moved into the police operating fund once that happens. So these funds will be replaced.
So, question again for Jared. I thought in what you presented that Fund 403, or the appropriation for the Big Trail widening and expansion project, that has stop-start costs associated with it if it does not get appropriated soon. Is that also true?
We would recrunch the numbers with the impact fees, allowing a little bit more funding, but I think we could keep moving with just the impact fee allocation.
Okay.
My concern is what our change order for undercuts is going to be for that area that's destroyed from them driving over it, but we'll address that down the road.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that Matt from the school is actually here. If you wanted any formal approval of that agreement of the path to Trailside, I know we're going to postpone that vote, but we could give that approval here as well.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it would certainly help to hear it and, you know, maybe move the needle on where we are with that.
Why aren't you in school?
Good morning, Matt Doublestein with Zionsville Community Schools. Great question. I'm not in school because I was watching your meeting. And I heard President Plunkett's question and was able to get here quickly. So forgive me if I missed something.
Wow. That's
Indeed,
impressive.
we're grateful to Mr. Logston and Mr. Lance for the time to work on this connection. Our residents and stakeholders have had questions about that connection for some time. In the interim, we have been able to make a connection to the 875 trail by way of sidewalk. So that is our internal 875 athletic and trailside campus trail network is connected to the 875 trail. We were able to work through the locations. Indeed, as Mr. Logston described, that initial concern was about the early placement of that trail. It was going to dump out into the bus lot, and we were concerned about safety there. This location, as proposed by their team and vetted through the attorneys in the easement agreement, is wonderful for us, and we believe would work well for residents and students on their way to school.
Perfect. For what it's worth, council, that's the guy that had the original email. So certainly appreciate that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the benefits of a long meeting.
One of them, right? Okay, well, I mean, that certainly changes the operating line for me to attach the trail side.
Yes.
All right, you know what? We're gonna open a public hearing. Are there any other questions before I open the hearing here? All right, so this is a public hearing. I approve publication of the public notice of the public hearing. At this point, I'll open the hearing. If there's any members of the public who would like to comment. If none, I will close the public hearing. So I guess with that information, and that would be 103 operating. I would make a motion to approve resolution 2023-14 with the exception of 403, 276, that's it.
President Plunkett, can I
Yes.
make just one observation? Would you consider amending your motion to put on hold the two appropriations instead of with the exceptions? I don't want it to
Oh, yeah,
look like it's
sure.
a denial and then we would have to republish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's a good point. So I withdraw my initial motion. And I would make a motion to put on hold then the appropriation 403 for the Parks Non-Reverting Capital Fund, 276 Ready Grant. And I believe that was it.
Second.
Second by Counselor Choi. Heather, did we get that right?
So if you're voting yes for this, you're approving the appropriations, except the two that were put on
Correct.
hold.
And then those would just be brought back at a later date for future consideration without having to republish the public hearing since we've already had a public hearing.
Is there a timeline within which they need to be?
There really isn't. I think we want to keep it somewhat fresh. So if we go maybe past a couple meetings, we might consider republishing, but the public hearing just requires it be 10 days before consideration and you can't go up past the amount that was published. So you can go to the amount. And it's not saying that you will approve in the future, just reconsider at a future meeting.
So we have a first by President Plunkett and a second by Counselor Choi. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Aye,
Was that one or two down there?
just, you do correct,
No, just one.
just one.
Motion passes 6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Hey, President Plunkett,
Yes.
now that we have Counselor Culp here, would it be appropriate, could we go back to C and could we suspend the rules on the salary ordinance so that if we approve, Ms. Keel can get going with her recruiting?
Are we allowed to do that?
Okay.
Yeah, you may.
So I'll make a motion to
Do we need to? I mean, is there a need to rush it? Is she still here? I don't. Oh, yeah.
I would like to start recruiting as soon as possible. We've been out without a position since May
Okay.
and anticipate it's going to be October before we have somebody start.
All right. I just wanted to verify if there was actual need to move it along.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules for ordinance 2023-14 and move to a final reading.
Second, first by Counselor Garrett, second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
I'll then make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-14 on final reading.
Second.
First by Counselor Garrett, second by Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Up next is other matters. Are there any other matters from counselors?
Make a motion to adjourn.
First by Counselor Garrett, second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Please note the shift in days due to the Labor Day holiday. Public notice will be posted in compliance with the Indiana open door law.